All right. Well, welcome to another podcast episode. Today is April 27th already, 2021. And we have
Unreal.
our guest, Jason Cements. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jason Cement. I'm out here in Los Angeles. I run a marketing agency called Get Visible. We call ourselves the Transcendent Marketers. We're even getting a trademark on that. And what it means is we move you to #1 in your industry online. Very simple.
Well, I'm sure there's more to it than that.
Yeah, the description's simple. The techniques and the strategy is not simple at all.
Sure. So I'm sure that a lot of bells go off in folks' head. So, everybody's different. How does, your pricing and strategy work?
So I'll give you a little bit of our background, which definitely sets us apart. So personally, I was a CPA over 30 years ago. Though I probably it was probably my bar mitzvah at that time, considering how I look, but I was a CPA, then I went to law school. I thought I would be an estate practice attorney, and I ended up starting an online business back in '96. And then in 2003, I bought the software company that was running my website. And then in 2005, launched the agency. Now it's called Get Visible. It used to be called LA Design. So for a good 10 years, I was on the side of the table as the business owner, working with the developers, working with the marketing people. So I was the guy who was writing the checks, if you will, learning how to code, learning how to do certain marketing. I taught myself search engine optimization back in the days of Alta Vista and Excite and Yahoo before Google was even a name. They were actually our client in my e-commerce business. So
That's awesome.
from the point of view of being a business owner, that's different than a person who went to school to be a graphic designer or learn how to be a coder. I'm all self-taught. I learned nothing in college that relates to what I do. I even had my marketing professor wanted to flunk me out of my college class in marketing and said, I know you could do better, type of thing. And so it's actually funny, the two professors that wanted to flunk me were my speech professor and my marketing professor. And now I speak all the time and I write and marketing
Isn't that
professor,
funny?
So I'm not a big fan of college. So especially not paying 50 or 75 grand a year, I don't get it.
Well,
Unless
I'm sure it's double, triple that now.
whatever the hell it is, right? So, I mean, college is for certain people, but it's not for everybody, and certainly not
Sure.
taking on $200,000 of expenses or debt. So bottom line is that and my partner in my agency was one of my first employees in the e-commerce business. He worked for me when he was 18, put himself through college. He became a real expert in pay-per-click and SEO. Started working with me was like a college degree. After he left and worked for a couple of years for someone else, it was like a PhD. And he came back to me and he said, let's start offering services to accompany your e-commerce licensing that you were doing, because we were licensing an e-commerce platform. It's called Adricom. The original name was Webcart, now became Adricom because the person running the software was from out of the country, and Adricom stands for the American Dream Company. He just wanted to move to America. He's like the immigrant story. Now he's here. Awesome. Yeah, he lives in North Carolina and he's running this.
Oh my gosh, that's my backyard.
Oh, really? Yeah, he's in Charlotte, which just announced yesterday the Apple's new campus they're going to build there. So
yeah,
now it's time to buy real estate in Charlotte. So that's what I was thinking. I hope he has renewal on his lease for his apartment. So basically, for the last 16 years, we've been growing our agency organically. Every couple of years, we added another employee, we added another revenue stream. So now we have a complete online marketing think tank along with deployment. So we've got rankings, we've got pay-per-click ad management, we have paid social for pay-per-click on Facebook versus pay-per-click on Google, because one is based on keywords, one is based on social. Then we have organic social media. And just to give you an idea of organic social media, when we started this 7, 8 years ago doing Facebook postings and Instagram and stuff like that, it was simple. Let's post 3-4 times a week. Let's, on your channel, let's engage. Let's go look for influencers. Let's look for people to grow your followers. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at our deliverables, it's 4 times as much work because there's Reels on Instagram. There's TikTok. There's now YouTube just launched YouTube Shorts, which is in beta. They all compete with each other to for short-term video. Then you've got stories, which is like Snapchat, but each channel has its own version of stories. Then we have our clients who have blogs, and we've got to post their blogs through the social channels also, because you should always amplify content. And we're going to talk about content, I think. And so all of a sudden, social media is not just about posts anymore. It's about multiple types of posts almost every day of the week. And that's before you even start engaging and looking for followers and looking for people to just help grow your channel. And so we've just grown every couple of years, not just in terms of revenue streams, but understanding how you mine the stream for more data, for more followers, for more transactions. So digital media is just a juggernaut. That's what I could say to you, marketing.
Wow.
I mean, think about your business, right? So how many people work at Petronella?
So we've got 4 full-timers, and then I've got a bunch of other folks that help us that are contractors, or not really contract. They have their own company, but we have great partnerships with them over the years, so we're able to expand and contract. So on a regular basis, we're probably 15, 20.
Right, amazing. Think about that. And so, and they're remote. They don't have to be in the office.
Yep.
One of the biggest side effects that COVID produced was my partner, and our main office is in Phoenix. I'm the outlier in California. So he always felt we need everyone in the office. We need that camaraderie, all that collaboration. All of a sudden now you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like standing at the cliff at Six Flags, and you have the 25-foot drop into the water. You know you're going to be okay, but you're still scared standing there.
Right.
You've never done the jump before. And so all of a sudden now you got something coming behind you saying you can't think about it anymore. You have to jump. So we had to jump into remote working, and all of a sudden now, and in Phoenix we were luckier because it was closed much less than here in California. Mm-hmm. And we were, I think, closed maybe for 2 months maximum. But now we're hybrid. We're 2 days in the office, 3 days at home. And all of a sudden, collaboration is better, the mood is better, performance is better. Every single metric you would look at is better. And I think maybe hybrid might be better than pure remote, but that's, again, we might be at the cliff of dropping those last 2 days. And maybe we got to the next 3, we're to the 15-foot cliff. Now we got to get to the 25-foot cliff. And so one of the side effects which you experience is you can have people working remotely. You've never even potentially met them, and yet productivity and performance is better than it was before. And it's a very interesting psychological experiment to just see how people are changing their work habits. Something as simple as work-life balance, I think, has now reversed its life-work balance. It's so subtle, but it's actually a profound mental change, because people have been stressed all year long with COVID. When will it end? Well, when will it end? Now we sort of see it ending. But I think what you actually see, people are leaving where they were living and moving. And not just because taxes are going up, but because they realize they can do their job if they want in that job remotely. And they can get now the things they thought they wouldn't get for 20 more years.
Right.
You know, they can get more land. They could get wake up at 7 o'clock, check some emails, and have a nice breakfast, and then go do some more work. Like, you just have it's not a 9 to 5 existence. You put in your 8 hours, but you don't do it consecutively anymore. And I think maybe that's a change. So, but all that comes back to you and I, because we still have to go canvas for business and get our name out there. And so therefore, people are coming to us and say, okay, look, we need you to position us ahead of our competition, because they're spending more money online, because offline networking isn't working anymore, and other avenues that are more physically oriented don't work. So that just imposes on you and I and our teams more of a demand to create content that's engaging, that Google likes, so the rankings come about. And that's why I've been giving webinars on what I call Hollywood content. So you could write a great article, 500 words. It's got all the what we call primary and secondary keywords. And technically, it looks like it has a lot of keywords to get ranked. The problem is you have to take in external factors like dwell time. How long do people sit on the page? What tricks can you put into the content, like a calculator or a video or something that keeps them engaged? slows down the hitting of the button to go back or go to the next thing. So how do you keep them inside? That's important for Google, how fast the page loads. But one of the things that people look at is the cosmetic architecture of a page. So if you have good photos, if you have a video, if you have iconography and you have good fonts and all that kind of stuff, all the details really matter, which makes our expenses go up to produce all this. But the outcome hopefully is longer engagement and better engagement. And one of the statistics that came out during this last year is that people like 2,000 word articles, not 500 word posts.
Wow.
So, yeah, because what Google looks for is topical relevance. So if you put out a monster article of 2,000 words, which is a good number, 10,000 is too long, 500 is too short, 2,000 is sort of like, 8 to 10 pages of it. It's a good college paper. You put that in there with some photos and some bar charts and some custom vector graphics, people will absorb that and they'll suck it up. And the only competition to that might be a celebrity video. And I say celebrity, I mean like an authority in the space. People will just listen to certain people, no matter what they're talking about. So if you can't get that, then the substitution is a healthy, content-rich article with what I call Hollywood production value. And if anyone's going to get anything out of what we talk about today, is they should invest more in how they present the content. Sort of like going to a wedding and wearing a tux, but don't just look like a penguin. Put the pocket square in there. Put something a little bit that
make it unique.
Yeah, a little bit. That's what I think.
And then maybe also repurpose that to video and audio.
Which gets to the whole social media aspect, is that if you can go both ways. I'm about to start a whole TikTok series of episodes that will educate people about digital marketing. You could even test one now, not the TikTok, but the brand is going to be GV for Get Visible. GV explains local SEO. If you go to Google right now and you type in that phrase, GV explains local SEO, you're going to see a blog that we already put up, and it's already ranking #1 on Google.
Nice.
And we're going to accompany that with TikTok videos. There will all be like a glossary of digital marketing. And the idea will be that I could create the video first and then turn it into a blog, or write the blog and then make a video of me talking about what's in the blog piece. So, and then I'll post it into social media. So you definitely want to think about amplifying your content. It's not just you write a piece and you put it out there and you're done. It's like, that's just the first step. So you're on the ball there.
Interesting. So what about, I've heard different things, people saying that SEO is dead and you got to do pay-per-click. Is that true?
So there's two reasons that it's not that it's true. It's that you should do pay-per-click along with SEO unless, and this is a big deal, and we just got this technology last week. If you already have a first page ranking, like a top ranking, then don't run the ad, unless there's a lot of advertisers there. But if it's just you and organically and your ad, then remove the ad, because then you're just paying Google extra money for the free traffic. But the problem with Google, and I just saw the statistic yesterday, is I think it's 76% of people do a Google search and they get the answer that they want before clicking anything because of the Google answer,
right?
Or they're seeing the video on the page. They don't need to go deeper, which means your website. So it's not that SEO is dead. It's just that Google is making SEO more difficult to produce the outcome of traffic because they're giving you alternatives to make Google your #1 destination. Because if they give you the answer, you're going to come back to Google next time. You're not really looking for the website. You're looking for the answer. So if they give it to you, great. So for an SEO perspective, that means we have to produce content that gets inside Google Answers, and that gives our clients some notoriety. So that's part one. Part two, though, is if you have the ad running along with the SEO, then you have what you call cross-marketing. So people who may distrust the ad will click organic, and if they don't care about the ad having a negative feeling, they'll click the ad. So you have two chances at the apple.
Right.
So I think we say the same thing in social media. If you put out a social media post, you're only going to get displayed to maybe 10% of your audience. Oh, I thought I had that shut.
Right.
But if you boost the post, and if you get comments on the post and do engagement, then you're going to get beyond that first 10% barrier. You're going to break through and more people will see it. So when you boost, you get to pick who it gets displayed to. And if you get engagement, you can't pick it, but at least if you have, let's say, 1,000 followers to your brand, you'll get another 100 or 200 more people engaging, the more interaction you get with your posts. So I think that PPC is a necessary complement to organic work.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Sure. So for your services, I just want to play customer or potential prospect for a minute. So how do you, what is your methodology? How do you start? Do you do an analysis first, or do you have like a fixed fee? Like how do you work?
It depends if we're doing website design or redesign or makeover versus traffic and leads and rankings and stuff like that. So if it's a website, then we're just going right in to figure out what not the deliverables, but what do they need? Is it a 10-page website? Is it a 50-page site? Do they have animations? That's very standard stuff. Do they want us to take a website theme, like one of those themes that already have been pre-done, and then customize it for them, or do they want something completely custom? So we could do all across the board. A lot of that is driven by budget. It's also driven by, there's two types of websites. There's the branding website and then the lead driving website. So for a branding site where your business is based on reputation and referral, you can do a lot. Hold on one second. You can do a lot more creatively with the website because you're not worried about SEO. You're not worried about getting the lead and the call to action in the same way, because it's all about the impact and the messaging and stuff like that. So you can have big photos, you can have videos and stuff like that. But if you care about SEO and you care about calls to action and speed and all of that, then you have to give up a little bit of the creative and you have to exchange it for more routine sort of websites.
So what if you have more than what if I'm the guinea pig, okay, and I've got my main website as petronellatech.com, and then we launch some, I guess they're called microsites or smaller sites. We have now compliancearmor.com, which is our Shopify e-commerce site where we sell like our intellectual property around cybersecurity, policies, procedure bundles, things like that, where we've done a lot of the heavy lifting for folks and maybe get them maybe 50% compliant by buying our bundle packages. So we've got, different properties out there. What do we've dabbled with pay-per-click and things like that. We haven't really had the best success for it or with it, but it gets confusing when you've got multiple properties like that. And you bring up a good point. Our main banner website, the Petronella Tech, it's old. We've been around over 19 years now, which is crazy. But that domain ranks so much better than the newer domain, right? So that's a factor, the domain age. But like for me or for my business, if my business is almost 100% referral, what's the strategy? Obviously I want to rank well and I want to outrank my competition, but a lot of my competition is so much bigger than me. I mean, they might be 100 or 500 times bigger than me. So what do you do with somebody like me that has multiple websites and properties?
Okay, so you actually raised an interesting point. And by the way, I'm cracking up because your logo is so similar to our new logo. So I'll have to show you that. I just don't have it on the screen here, but it's pretty cool. The Shopify one, where you're selling a canned solution to cybersecurity, let's say, is probably more interesting than your services business because you can scale a non-service business much faster than a service.
And that was part of our strategy, because we have so many people. Our stuff is super complicated, very, very complex. People don't know where to start, which is why I put a lot of products and various, I call them puzzle pieces, on the Shopify site to kind of give them building blocks to move forward. Okay. But the other side of the company, the PetronellaTech.com, is more of the white glove consulting, traditional professional services company where, like I said, almost 100% referral, where we do a lot of the heavy lifting with them or for them.
So here's what I would say. The Shopify one is for sure where I would be focusing energy. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to promote that website. You can have because Petronella has more rankings and authority, you could carve out space in the Petronella domain to create an entire ecosystem around your product environment and just send them over to the Shopify store to make the purchase. So that's one thing.
Make like an area on Petronella Tech, like petronellatech.com/store or something. And then
Right.
that
Actually, I'll give you a different idea that you're not going to expect. And we're doing it for a client of ours who's a medical device design engineering firm.
Oh, nice.
Right. So he's called devicelab.com and he's a longtime client. He's now going to offer a webinar series on how you bring a product to market, regulatory, all sorts of things, a medical device. That's his thing. So you could have Petronella University and actually put that inside your website and create videos. It's not that you have to sell anything. Literally create a university teaching people about cybersecurity and digital forensics, all that stuff that you, and I'm only using that because that's on your slogan.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever the topics are. And then because those are not necessarily selling, they're educating, it's more likely that people will share that content internally with their own lists. You promote that, and then in that content, it's like, well, of course, here's the sales thing. Right. So what you want to do on the, which will benefit Petronella as well, is you need to come up with one product that doesn't cost anything or has a very low buy-in, $10.
We have that.
$15.
We have what's called a guidebook. We have a CMMC guidebook for folks interested in CMMC or the cybersecurity maturity model certification. We also have,
that's for developers. I'm saying something that's, unless they're the ones that are the buyer, but something that is maybe a diagnostic thing, something that would address a pain point.
Right.
You know, like that thing is targeting a specific individual. That's fine. You could do pay-per-click ads, target them. You could do LinkedIn outreach. I mean, these are things that we do for routinely. That's why it's so fresh in my head. So you could very much micro-target, which is what you need to do. You need to micro-target to specific communities the content that talks to the pain points and the pleasure senses of those, of the people in that community. But for the larger, where it's not, where you're selling to a company and there's no way to define it, then you need to create, I think, a diagnostic. Like, are you sure your cybersecurity is in good shape? You know, want to see how fast we can penetrate it? You know, something that you know we're always going to fail.
So we did that. I did an offer a long time ago for the attorney niche, and it was a $500 pen test, which was like a loss leader, because a pen test is like a $10,000, $20,000 project. So we did a.
But they don't know that. But the attorneys don't know that, right?
Well, they quickly identify and relate to it, and I was able to close several of them and get them to be new clients.
So why'd you stop?
We got distracted into the CMMC.
Okay, so but you understand. Let's put it this way: a lot of what I do, it's sort of like business psychology. I'm not telling you much of anything you can't intuit.
It's direction, okay? Yeah.
So it's the best job I can do is to guide you to do something you sort of already want to do, but maybe you couldn't articulate it.
Right.
And so because we know we're doing this, as I said, routinely, I can articulate a plan for you that is a combination usually of internal resources and things that we can do. We could just do better than you because we just have the know-how and the time to put it into place. But the fact of the matter is, creating, because cybersecurity is such a big word and it means a lot of things, but it mostly means nothing to the layperson who runs a company. They don't understand any of this stuff. They just know, I'm scared to click a link inside an email because it could be a phishing scam, even if they even know what phishing means. You know what I mean? So therefore, to the extent that you create a university area and you start educating and you position yourself as the go-to person, then all of a sudden now you've commoditized your Shopify thing through this education and you're getting a lot of attention. It's your funnel, and then you pull people out of the funnel to bring them into Petronella corporate, you know, for the services side of the business. And the beautiful thing is that the multiple of the Shopify stuff is worth a lot more money to the company in the bottom line, just because services are valued at $1, you know, 1-to-1, but e-commerce is valued much higher. So you're doing everything you should be doing, actually. except for the marketing side, which is why we're having this talk.
That's right.
But that's how I would do it. And I don't know if you had thought about a university aspect, but that's the approach I would take.
Yeah, and so yes, we have thought about that, and we have a lot of educational areas on Petronella Tech. We started that process with HIPAA compliance for healthcare.
Yes, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, so if you look on Petronella Tech, you'll see the HIPAA page, which is like a really long format, and we've done like custom graphics for that area. But I think what you're saying is we've got this main core Petronella Tech site, using my example, and
Right.
you're saying cross-pollinate and use that girth and that leverage, that SEO page rank, and since it's old, that authority site, use that and link it to the newer sites like compliancearmor.com or blockchainsecurity.com, and talk about and educate with videos, good content, etc. on the Petronella Tech side, but then link them over to the shopper. Now, I've heard mixed things on that. I've heard that you shouldn't link them because then Google can frown upon that or call it a link wheel. What are your thoughts on that?
No, it's not a link wheel at all. The risk you have potentially is that Google treats Petronella like an affiliate website. This is sort of new in the most recent update. And it doesn't affect Petronella, it only affects the Shopify website. But again, it's all resources. If you have the resources to grow the compliance, and you have multiple domains, which makes it harder. So that's why I like the idea of the university,
right?
Because it builds presence and authority to Petronella. But you could do the same drive on each of those websites and have your teaching modules inside Compliance Armor or inside blockchainsecurity.com. Those are easy to do. It just you're spreading the wealth, if you will, because you have to invest in
3 times the cost.
Well, you know how rankings work. Rankings is 3 things. It's now with Core Vitals, it's even more so. It's the power of the website in terms of how fast it is, how well it's coded, all that kind of stuff in connection to the keywords that you're trying to promote. That's part 1. Part 2 is how well your content is written, which gets back to the Hollywood content and the research of primary and secondary keywords, and we call it topical authority. And the third is authority in general in terms of links. So you have to have backlinks in order to get a higher domain score. Without backlinks, all you have is content. Is not enough. So you have to do backlink authority times 3 because you're spreading your domain authority through 3 domains. So it's just more expensive. I don't want to forget this. It's important. Is because you talked about HIPAA compliance. So parallel to HIPAA is ADA compliance for Disabilities Act. So there's a IRS code, and this is good for your clients, even for yourself, that, there's R&D tax credits. That's one thing. But there's something entirely different under the ADA regulations, which gives a business a tax credit up to $5,000 every year that you invest in your ADA compliance for your website. So the first
that's
200
for like making the website more easily readable, like a screen reader and things like that, right? But you probably can't use the credit for, maybe you can for SEO.
Well, no, the way the statute is written, it seems that if you invest in an upgraded, first of all, a website to make it ADA compliant, there are companies that will charge $15,000 just to audit a website, let alone do the work.
Right.
So if you're spending $10,000 to upgrade a website and make it ADA compliant, obviously you're doing things that are not strictly ADA. You're putting in new content, you're putting in images, but in the process of adding an image, you also have to put in the alt tag.
That's right.
And the other stuff related to ADA. So the government says, we're not asking you to isolate the 5 minutes you spent in ADA. If the project is an ADA compliant project, we're giving you a $5,000 credit against $10,250. The first $250 they don't count. But then you're literally getting a free website, because if you spend $10,000, $10,250, you get a write-off. So you get that, that's an expense. But then you also get a $5,000 credit. So if you owed $5,000 in taxes, you owe 0. You know what I mean? So you might be paying $10,000 for the website, but when you look at your books at the end of the year, you ended up pretty much not paying because you get the $10,000.
Yeah, you just got to front the money, and then when
Yeah, you got to
do
front the money. Then
yeah.
right, so you get it back at the end, and then you have a new website. You can do a lot of things with that website beyond just being compliant. You can talk about your compliance. It's just
No, that's great.
a lot of things you can do. So, in regard to what you do as cybersecurity, I think that compliance, ADA compliance, fits into that. HIPAA is more restrictive because it's only for healthcare organizations. Other companies, they don't have to comply with that.
Well, you've got the business associate that works with the health, and then you got the covered entity. Yeah,
correct. So, man, there's a lot to do. And thankfully, right now, it's worth it under the new administration to look for resources that are out there to help you invest into your business, because short of PPP money and EIDL money, and now this tax credits, and whether it's R&D tax credits or ADA tax credits, I think there's a lot more stuff coming down the pike that's a lot of initiatives that will help people with, I don't want to say promoting their business, but accelerating the growth of their business. Because like I just heard last week in Australia, if you hire someone in America to sell for you to drive business back to Australia, the government will subsidize the cost of the salesperson substantially. Like 50 or 70% of the cost of the salesperson is paid for by the government for like the first 2 years.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible.
Crazy stuff. So I'm saying
maybe I'll be a salesperson for Australia on the side.
Yeah, well, you have to drive business to Australia, because I spoke to a company last week and they were trying to pitch me, and they're like, they just happened to mention that program, and I was like, that's amazing. So
that's awesome.
I think that there's a lot of opportunity out there for companies to look for resources that didn't exist 2 years ago even.
Yeah, I agree. For sure.
You know, yeah. One last thing I'll say for Petronella is maybe come up with a certification that you give to people who complete your courses. If you do this,
I've actually thought about that. I never followed through with it, but yeah, I've definitely thought about that.
Yeah, so that's sort of what I think. And
so like if I'm the guinea pig and we continue the conversation,
you need to read this book. I don't even sell the book. Is on Amazon. I don't care about selling it, but I like holding it up when I do meetings. I would say that's if you haven't read the book, that encapsulates a lot of what we do. And it's crazy. I wrote it 4 years ago. The majority of the stuff still applies today, even with Google algorithm changes, difference in social media. It's like, if you don't want to hire me, just read the book.
So what if somebody does want to hire you though? What if I'm the guinea pig and I want to kind of test you out, and I want to, so what do I do? Do I pay you a fee per hour, or how do I work with you?
Right. So we don't do hourly. We have an intrinsic hourly IRR that we shoot for, but ultimately it's a monthly retainer. And what we try to do that's very different than other agencies is we try to open up the black box. And instead of saying, oh, you're paying $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month, we try to a la carte it in the sense of, here's how much money is being spent on content production. Here's how much money is being spent on software that we have to acquire for tracking and other purposes. Here's how much is spent on ads. So we really delineate where the money is being invested so that there's a lot more transparency to the client. And yeah. I don't know if it's better or worse to do this, because some clients seem to get confused by all the line items.
Right.
But I just feel, having been on their side of the table, I want to know where that $5,000 fee is going. I want to understand how you're spending it, because I know I don't understand most of what you do if I'm the business owner, but at least I feel like, well, if I'm getting 3 blog posts a month and I'm getting a certain number of postings on my social channels, I can see how that money is being allocated, and it sort of democratizes the spend.
Sure.
So I would say most of our clients are spending between $3,000 and $5,000 a month. Some are a little bit less, but most not so much anymore, because as we come to realize, even if you handed me a template, for example, that said customize it, it still requires 40 to 80 hours to finish a website properly, because the details matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, you know, you can get into a car and get from here to there, but do you want to do it with air conditioning? Do you want to have good sound system? Do you want press the brakes 3 times to stop the car. It all depends on the level of detail and finesse and performance. And I use not the acronym, but I parallel to the Toyota Avalon. My first car was an Avalon. It was like, I had it for 17 years. That thing was like you couldn't kill it.
That's like my Toyota, yeah.
Right? And it wasn't the most, if I wanted luxury, I would have gotten a Lexus, same
That's
engine,
right.
just a whole different appeal. But I got the same speed. I got almost everything except the luxury. So if you want the luxury of the Madison Avenue brand and that appeal, you're going to spend double or triple what we charge. But if you also want to make sure that you're not buying an overseas reduced value labor force, and I'm not against overseas, I'm just saying it's not the same, then that's where we are. We fit in the middle. Same thing for our e-commerce system. The Advercom system is, if you want an out of the box, go to Shopify for out of the box.
Is Shopify a negative? Like, I've heard mixed things on SEO, like you can't SEO a Shopify site.
Right. So my understanding is it's not easy to do Shopify for SEO because you can't control the underlying code in the way you can with Advercom or Magento. You have more control. Right. So you're limited by Shopify. Shopify also is more cookie cutter in terms of how it looks. You can tell often that you're on a Shopify website. That doesn't make it bad. It makes it sort of expected for the consumer because they're used to the look and feel, so it's easy to shop. So your abandonment rate could be better because the experience is relatively common. But if you're trying to distinguish yourself and you want the rankings and you want features that you don't get out of the box with Shopify, and you're concerned that plugins don't integrate well with each other, then you need a more custom solution. That's one type of customer. The other type of customer who might be okay with Shopify says, I still don't want Shopify because I don't want to run the website. It's just a division of our business. I want to hire someone to manage the whole online. I want to outsource that function.
Right.
I don't want a webmaster for 10 grand a month, and I don't want to have to deal with my webmaster leaving after 2 years. And then I got a knowledge transformation issue, and I got to have vacation time, and I got to send that person to conferences, and whether it's online or offline, and all that stuff. So all of a sudden you say, well, there's an alternative, which is what Advercom offers companies is we become your division for e-commerce. You log in, you get everything you need. You can download the orders and process everything and deal with customers, but you don't have to manage the catalog anymore. You don't have to, you want to move things around on the page. We do it all for you. We built this system so it's totally integrated. So it's a different value proposition than Shopify. Plus, since we own the code, we can do all sorts of things for SEO that Shopify just can't do. I try to be agnostic and get visible.
Right.
So we run Shopify, we run Magento, we run Advercom, we run WordPress with WooCommerce. Each client gets what's appropriate for them. I don't try to upsell one or the other. I try to be sort of honest about it. And think about it. I mean, it's cheap to build a WordPress e-commerce website, much cheaper than deploying a Shopify or a.
But is it worth it to, like, if I've already got, like, I have a couple of folks on my team that do content writing, and like Blake on my team, he does a lot of the Shopify management and marketing. And then I've got Aaron and BJ that help with a lot of the content writing and things like that. So is it worth it for us to dump Shopify and go to something else for SEO reasons? Or, like, we also have a Shopify plugin. I think it's an SEO plugin that helps us with on-page SEO and optimizations to give us some of those things that Shopify doesn't do out of the box. But is it still limited in that fashion? Like, is it still,
so you're actually raising the perfect point, which is that's an entry point to our business. Someone comes to us and says, how am I doing? How are you going to tell it? I mean, you know what your sales are, you know sort of what your traffic is, but you don't really know what your potential is. And you don't know how to evaluate your competition. So that's a real entry point. Someone comes to us and says, give me a snapshot, sort of what you do for cybersecurity. What's my exposure? So I'm giving you the, instead of exposure, I'm giving you what's the upside, what are the gaps, stuff like that. And so is it worth it to drop Shopify? Not yet. But what is worth it for you to do is, besides evaluating where you are, what's worth it is determine how much you're spending to maintain Shopify existence. The content writing is irrelevant because that crosses any website
Do
you
that
run.
on
So
any-
that's
yeah.
not, the only question is how much is the salary and expenses that you're spending for someone to manage the Shopify
Well,
thing?
yeah, well, in our case,
You know?
I mean, that's not his full-time role. I mean, he
I
might
realize that.
spend, 30 minutes or so, updating or adding a product or doing something, but his main job is more IT support and, helping with marketing tasks and things like that.
But think about it like this. Let's say you pay the guy $6,000 a month, whoever it is, okay? And if he devotes 15% of his time to Shopify, okay, that's $1,000 a month that you're spending
Sure.
beyond the cost of Shopify, okay? I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying what's
Yeah.
important is to evaluate what your actual cost is. And if you're only spending $1,000 a month, that's not a big deal. It's when you start spending 3 or 4 that all of a sudden you're saying, well, wait a second.
Right.
And then when you get to 10, when you have a real full-time webmaster, you have to start asking yourself, is this the best way to spend
do
my
that.
money? Especially when you start determining, well, how long is the person staying with me? How easy will the next person be? How good will the next person be? So
Right.
you have a lot of variables. So when Adricon's been around since 2003, has clients for over a decade, there's
Right.
no knowledge transfer because you have continuity of business. So,
Sure.
and I don't want to advocate for Adricom. I'm just giving you where my agency fits in between two different extremes. Adricom found the same thing, that it fits into places that there aren't that many competitors.
Right.
That's sort of in the business that you're in with Petronella, you have the same thing. Like you said, there are the big gorillas with big budgets, and how do you compete with them? Well, and the little guys can't do what you do either. They put out a shingle and they talk about cyber, but do they really know cyber the way that you know it? So you're in the middle, just like I am, and it's like you're in the water and you got the pressure on both sides of you.
Right.
So how do you keep that submarine from sinking or going to the surface? So the way you do it is you have to balance your investment in content and authority, all that kind of stuff. So this is actually a different type of conversation than I expected because, well, in a good way, because I like when I can contextualize it to the person who I'm talking to, which
Sure.
I can talk about me all day long. It's much more interesting to talk about what I do in the context of what you're facing. And so
Well, I'm sure that there's a lot of my listeners that are in the same boat as me. They probably have an older website, or maybe they don't. Maybe they're starting a brand new and they don't know where to start. So I think it's good to have somebody like you that can kind of help guide them. So, going back to me as the guinea pig in the example. So if I want you to kind of look through all my stuff over the past 20 years, what does that cost me?
Anywhere between $2,500 and 10 grand. It all depends. I mean, if we're doing a full steam audit of your SEO existence, you're getting up closer to 10 grand. Again, not crazy expenses depending on the size of your website, because what do we have to look at? We have to look at your link profile. What are the sites linking to you, and determine, do you have toxic links in there? What's the quality of the links? We have to look at your competition and see who's linking to them and what links should you be getting. So we're giving you deliverables at the end to say, here's companies you should be going to get linking. Here's links you need to get removed. Here's duplicate content that you have because someone 5 years ago wrote some articles that they ripped off the web, or that they didn't realize were ripped off the web and they copied stuff. So we have an audit. It's 243 steps to get through. So depending on the scale of the audit, it starts at 2,500 and goes up to, the most I think anyone ever paid was 13 grand for an audit. Because
Wow.
my belief is you can audit all day long. It's like we could talk about this podcast stuff for 24 hours and not stop. But what you need is actionable items. So rather than try to uncover everything, ideally spend 5 grand at the maximum. Identify low-hanging fruit and lower, a little bit not so low-hanging fruit. Deal with that and see what the impact is, because it might be 50% of the items you find are just not relevant in terms of impact.
And we've done the audits before with software. We've purchased software that'll look for different things. I don't know how accurate it is, but I mean, it'll show.
Stuff. Yeah. The software doesn't work in the same way.
Yeah. So it's okay. So it sounds like $2,500, $5,000 roughly for an audit.
Yeah.
And then so what if somebody, what if you're off to the races, you want to get started? How long does it take for you to get results?
30 to 60 days.
So you feel confident that in 30 to 60 days of result, like for me, if I want the result of a sale or sales on my new website at compliancearmor.com, you feel like in 2 months you can get sales working?
Well, here's what can happen in the 2 months. First of all, we can figure out what's wrong, and we can make make technical adjustments to your situation. I can't tell you about sales or traffic, because what if your domain score is a 10 instead of a 30? As an example. What if you don't have the authority that you need? What if we find so much crap in there that we have to fix it despite all the software that you used?
Right.
And what I can tell you is that within that 60-day period, you'll have a plan going forward of what you have to do, and you'll have time frames. I couldn't tell you, I can't tell somebody in advance what the cure is until I know what the disease is.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's fair.
But 60 days is a time frame to look. We can evaluate in 1 day.
Right.
Lowest hanging fruit, but that's not enough.
Sure.
You're paying us to do the deeper dive, so that takes time. And
so now, do you actually fix the stuff?
Some of it we can fix, some of it we can't. Again, it's the same problem, because we have the developers to do it in case the clients don't, which they often don't. But we can't tell you in advance what the cost of fixing is until we see the problem. So it's really what we tend to do is we say we'll budget 20 hours for fixing.
Right.
We'll assess a cost for that, and we'll plan that in advance to say that's sort of the upper bounds, because everyone wants to have a limit. And then if there's more, it always passes the smell test. That there's more to do.
So if we are able to fix some stuff, does that time get freed up for you to do some of the other stuff? Okay.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Gotcha.
I want people to pay us for 2 reasons: either they're lazy or they're busy.
Right.
That's it. If I can teach you how to do
busy on the right things, I guess.
Yeah. Meaning I don't want you to pay me because you feel forced. I want you to pay me because it makes business sense for you to do it. It makes business sense if you're lazy because you don't want to do it. Sure. And it makes business sense if you don't have the resources but needs to get done, and then you're paying us to do it. But if you feel like you're being forced to do it, I don't want bad money.
Right. No, I think that's fair. And I believe in the same, absolutely.
Yeah. So we covered a lot of ground, as Howard Stern always says. You said it all.
Yeah, no, this has been good. I'm sure that a lot of my listeners are in similar, situations where they're starting off or trying to figure out, how to make all this work, and I think that you can kind of shed light on some of that.
Well, I've been doing it long enough, man. It's hard to believe. Yeah. 25 years I'm online.
Nice.
That's a long time.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a long time.
Hitting 25. Another
19.
May.
I've been doing it longer than 19, but this company is 19.
That's a long time. So you are the gorilla in your industry, maybe not by size, but by experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And in certain areas for sure.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well,
awesome, Jason. Thank you. I appreciate it. Lots of good value. So they can go to Amazon and get your book then, right?
Yeah, they could do that, or go to getvisible.com. I'm sure it's somewhere on that website too. So.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate you being a guest. I think this has been fantastic.
Appreciate that. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.